They said I was heartless. But what would you do if your parents stole from you to fund your sister's dream vacation, then smiled and said, "We did it for the family"? I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I just sold the house while they were gone. And when they came back from paradise, there was no home left to come back to. I'm Claire Monroe. And this is how I learned that revenge doesn't always need anger. Sometimes it just needs paperwork. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, don't forget to hit subscribe / like button and tell us in the comments where you're tuning in from. 3 years ago, I thought I had everything. My apartment in downtown Seattle was small, but it was mine. Mornings meant coffee brewing in the corner and the hum of my computer warming up. The light from the monitor painted my reflection on the glass, a tired but satisfied woman who believed she was finally in control of her life. I was deep into finishing a new level for a game we were launching at Pixel Forge Studios when my phone started buzzing across the desk. Mom flashed on the screen again and again. It was the 4th time in 10 minutes. I sighed, saved my work, and picked up. "Hi, Mom. Everything okay?" What came through wasn't a hello. It was a sob. "Claire," she said between uneven breaths. "Your father. He lost his job. They shut the company down. No severance, nothing." I leaned back in my chair. "What? When did this happen last week? We've been trying to figure things out, but it's bad. The mortgage is behind the bank sending letters. I don't know what to do." Her voice broke. "We could lose the house." For a moment, I just stared at the rain sliding down my window. The city looked so calm, so far away from what she was describing. My fingers tapped the desk, counting the silence between us. "Okay," I finally said. "I'll come home. We'll sort it out." "Really?" "Oh, sweetheart. I didn't want to ask, but thank you." When I hung up, the apartment felt smaller. My framed photo of us at the lake, the one where everyone's smiling except me, seemed to follow my eyes. I packed slowly, pulling clothes from drawers, folding them with the kind of mechanical focus that keeps you from feeling too much. Driving east on I-90 that night, the sky was a sheet of gray. Seattle's skyline faded in the rearview mirror, while the radio murmured soft static. Each mile I drove felt heavier. I kept replaying her voice, fragile pleading, and something in me tightened. I told myself it was just temporary. A few months, maybe 6 at most. By the time I pulled into Bellevue, it was past 9. The porch light of my parents' house was still on the same one Dad used to scold me for leaving lit all night. When I opened the car door, the air smelled like wet pine. Mom was already at the door before I reached it. "Claire." She threw her arms around me, squeezing too tight. Her hair smelled like the same vanilla shampoo she'd used my whole life. "Thank you for coming home." "It's okay, Mom," I said softly, trying to smile. "We'll figure it out." Inside the house looked smaller too. The walls felt closer, the furniture older. The TV flickered in the corner of the living room. Sam was sprawled on the couch, earbuds in, scrolling through her phone. She looked up long enough to say, "Hey," then went back to whatever she was watching. "Hi, Sam." I dropped my suitcase by the stairs. "Still glued to that thing, huh?" She smirked without looking up. "Content doesn't create itself." Mom shot her a look. "Your sister just drove all the way from Seattle. Be polite." Sam shrugged. I said, "Hey." At dinner, the table felt crowded, though there were only 4 of us. The clatter of silverware filled the silence until Dad finally spoke. His voice carried that mix of pride and command I remembered from childhood. "So Pixel Forge is still doing well? You still working on those games?" "Yeah," I said, cutting into my food. "I can keep working remotely while I'm here. It shouldn't be a problem." "Good." He nodded, glancing at Mom. "You've always been the responsible one. We just need a little help, that's all. Once I'm back on my feet, things will go back to normal." Mom smiled too quickly. "It won't be forever, honey. Just until we sort things out." I took a sip of water to hide the lump in my throat. "Of course," I said. "I'm here for whatever you need." Sam leaned back in her chair. "Does that mean I get the bigger room now?" she joked. Dad chuckled. Mom scolded her half-heartedly. I tried to laugh along, but the sound didn't come out right. After dinner, I carried my suitcase upstairs to the old guest room. The wallpaper still had faint marks from when Sam and I drew on it as kids. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the boxes stacked in the corner. Evidence of a family slowly sinking but pretending to float. Downstairs, I could hear them talking. Voices low, worried, the sound of bills being shuffled, pens scratching paper. I turned off the light and lay down watching the ceiling blur in the dim glow from the hallway. My mind kept circling the same thought. This is just for a while. Just until they're okay again. But even then, something in my chest whispered the truth. I didn't want to hear. That while could last forever. By the time spring of 2022 rolled around, the house didn't feel like a temporary stop anymore. It felt like a place I was paying rent for but didn't own. The mornings were all the same, my laptop open on a folding desk in the corner room. The faint smell of burnt toast drifting through the hall. My mother's voice echoing up the stairs. Sam. Get out of bed, for God's sake. It's almost 11, I muted myself on the conference call. Through the window, I could see my father in the backyard, fiddling with a broken sprinkler, pretending to fix something just to stay busy. On the screen, my co-workers debated game mechanics, their faces framed by neat apartments and bright walls. Mine was the only one with family noise bleeding in. I unmuted when it was my turn. Yes, I can rework the level design by Friday, I said, forcing a calm tone. Afterward, I turned off the camera and stared at the reflection in the dark screen. 10 hours a day of work, and still it felt like I was running in place. I do this so they can watch Netflix on my account, I thought. Downstairs, Mom was at the kitchen counter, scrolling through her iPad. Claire, she called. Could you transfer a bit more this month? Groceries are insane. Eggs are up to $6 a dozen. I rubbed my eyes. I already sent $3,000, Mom. Same as every month. Dad looked up from his coffee. The economy's a mess, he said. Think of this as an investment in the family. Once we're stable again, you'll get it all back, double. He said it like a salesman pitching stock options. I'll believe that when I see it, I muttered mostly to myself. Mom frowned. Don't be ungrateful. We're all trying our best. Their best meant Dad reading the newspaper all morning, and Mom tracking sales at the outlet mall. Sam sat at the table filming herself making avocado toast for her followers, her phone propped against a mug. Content doesn't create itself, she said when I gave her a look. That night I sat at my desk after everyone had gone to bed, a single lamp lighting my spreadsheets. Salary, $6, $200 a month. Taxes, loans, family contribution. Savings, $0. The cursor blinked at me like an accusation. I opened my banking app side and transferred another $500 to Mom's account. I typed a quick message. Please try to budget this month. And hit send. The message stayed unread. Outside, the rain tapped softly against the window. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I had been in this house a year. My friends in Seattle sent photos of weekend hikes and brunches lives that still moved forward. Mine felt paused like a game stuck on a loading screen. The next morning, Dad called me into the living room. The table was covered with grocery bags, wine, cheese, even shrimp. We're celebrating, he said. Your mom found a way to refinance the mortgage. Things are looking up. Mom beamed. You've kept us going, Claire. We're so proud. I tried to smile, but the word refinance sat heavy. That's great, I said. Dad pulled out a bottle of champagne. Come on, join us. I hesitated. It's Tuesday morning. He laughed. A little celebration never hurt anyone. You've been our rock. He poured glasses for himself and Mom, then one for me. The bubbles rose in the glass, catching the light. I held it, but didn't drink. They clinked their glasses together. To family, Dad said. To staying together no matter what. Sam appeared in the doorway, phone in hand. Wait, do that again, she said, raising her camera. It's cute. Mom giggled and repeated the toast for the video. I put my glass down on the table. I have work to finish, I said quietly. As I walked back upstairs, their laughter trailed behind me. In my room, I sat on the bed, the champagne smell clinging to my hands. For a moment, I closed my eyes and listened to the sound of them celebrating below, happy, oblivious, comfortable. They think it's generosity, I thought. I call it obligation. And somewhere deep inside, something began to crack. The small, steady sound of patience breaking. The next morning started with the sound of Sam's laughter. She was sitting on the couch in the living room, her phone propped up against a candle jar, adjusting filters on a video of herself sipping iced coffee. The sunlight came in through the blinds, catching her perfectly curled hair. Mom stood behind her, watching proudly. She really has an eye for this stuff, she said, smiling at me as I came down the stairs. If she gets popular, the whole family benefits. I poured coffee into a chipped mug, too tired to argue. She's 27, Mom. Maybe she could start working at that cafe near the library. I know the manager. They're hiring. Mom's smile dropped. Claire, don't be so negative. She's building her brand. You, of all people, should understand creativity takes time. Creativity doesn't pay bills, I said quietly. Sam looked up from her phone, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Wow, thanks for the support. Mom turned on me. Why do you always have to ruin the mood? You act like every dollar you spend on this house is charity. We're a family. Family. That word was starting to sound like a leash. Later that day, I was on a work call in my room when I heard my mother's voice at the door. Sweetheart, can I borrow your credit card for a minute? Sam needs a few things for a video she's filming. Just some lighting equipment and props. Nothing big. I sighed, pulling open my drawer and handing it over. Just make sure it's under $200, okay? She smiled, the kind that always meant she'd already decided otherwise. Of course. That evening, while finishing a spreadsheet, I got a bank alert on my phone, Louis Vuitton, $1 and $204.72. I stared at the number, waiting for it to change into something else. I walked downstairs holding my phone like evidence. Mom and Sam were in the living room, unboxing a designer bag. Sam squealed, "Oh my God, it's perfect. It'll look amazing in the video." "Tell me that wasn't my card," I said. Mom didn't even flinch. "Relax, Claire. It's a good investment. People notice details like that. The whole family benefits when Sam's image improves. An image, you used my credit card for an image." She waved her hand dismissively. "You'll get over it. You make good money." Why are you always so dramatic about small things? Something inside me snapped, but quietly. "Small things," I repeated. Sam rolled her eyes. "Don't be jealous just because I'm actually trying to do something fun with my life." I stared at her, then at my mother. "You mean with my money?" Mom stood crossing her arms. "You've been so ungrateful lately. We're all working together here. I keep this house running, your father's looking for jobs. Sam's chasing something that could change her life. Why can't you be happy for us?" I laughed once, dry and short. "Because I'm the only one who's actually working," she frowned. "You always think you're better than everyone. You act like we're a burden." "I don't have to act," I said. For a second, the room went still. Even Sam stopped recording. Then Mom shook her head. "You've changed, Claire. You used to care about this family. Money's made you cold." That was the moment it hit me. The twist of guilt, the way she flipped the blame so smoothly, I almost believed it. It wasn't gratitude. It was gaslighting. I left before I said something I couldn't take back. Outside, the air was cold, sharp with the smell of rain. I climbed into my car and sat there, both hands gripping the steering wheel. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked older than I remembered. Eyes tired, mouth set, I whispered to the empty car, "I'm not the problem." The streetlight flickered across the windshield, catching the faint tremor in my jaw. Somewhere in the house behind me, I could still hear laughter, muffled and distant. I took a deep breath, turned the key, and let the engine idle. I wasn't going anywhere yet. Not physically, but in my mind, I'd already started counting down. The meeting room smelled like coffee and anxiety. I stood at the front of the long glass table, the projector humming behind me, a slideshow of concept art flickering across the wall. Tara sat to my right, flipping through notes, giving me a small, encouraging nod. Across the table, Nick leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, smirking like he already knew where this was going. So I said, clicking to the next slide, "Our goal with this build is to tighten the player loop, make each quest feel personal, reactive. It's less about size and more about emotion." Nick cut in before I could finish. "If we'd actually gotten the last build on time, maybe we could see if that worked." The room went quiet. Tara shot him a look. "We were only behind by a few days. QA delayed feedback, not Claire's team." Nick shrugged. "Doesn't matter whose fault it is. Deadlines are deadlines. We can't keep holding the schedule hostage because someone's distracted." I froze for half a second, then met his eyes. "If you're implying something, just say it." He smiled, leaning forward. "I'm implying that leadership requires focus, and it's hard to be focused when your personal life's falling apart." The air thickened. Everyone avoided looking at me. Melissa, our director, finally spoke. "Enough, Nick. That's out of line." She turned to me. "Claire, is there something going on at home?" I straightened my shoulders. "No, I'm fine." That was a lie. I'd never been fine. After the meeting, Melissa caught me by the elevators. "You're one of the best designers I've got," she said softly. "But I need you to protect your energy. Don't give all of it away to people who don't give any back." I smiled the way tired people smile. "I'll be okay." That night, I was the last one in the office. The lights buzzed softly overhead. My monitor glowed with endless bug reports. My phone vibrated against the desk. Mom. I didn't answer, but the voicemail came through a minute later. Claire, honey, can you pay the water bill? Your dad forgot and they're threatening to shut it off. It's just easier if you handle it. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then sighed, and reached for my wallet. Hours later, I woke up to the faint buzz of my computer fan. I'd fallen asleep on the keyboard. My neck ached, my eyes burned, and the game build still crashed every third load. The only light in the room came from the monitor, where a new message flashed across the screen. Project hold, pending management review. My stomach sank. The next morning, I walked into the office and found the email waiting. HR. One line stood out. Effective immediately, Project Haven is reassigned to Nick Foster. I stared at it for a long time. No explanation, no apology. Just a shift in ownership. The office suddenly felt too bright, too loud. I packed up my things, my sketch pad, my headphones, the coffee mug Tara gave me, and walked out into the drizzle. Melissa's voice came from behind me as I reached the door. Claire. I turned. She stood there, coat over her arm, expression calm, but heavy. Sometimes she said quietly, the best way to love your family is to stop saving them. Her words hung in the air like a truth I'd been avoiding for years. I nodded once and left. Before she could see my face, outside, the rain was steady, soft, but cold. I walked to the parking lot feeling the weight of my wet hair against my neck, the city humming around me. My phone buzzed again. Mom. The bill was higher than expected. Send more, no greeting, no thank you, just a request, no a command. I unlocked the screen, stared at the message until it blurred, then locked it again without replying. I sat in the car for a long time, the rain drumming against the roof, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. The exhaustion was different now, not just physical, but hollow. The kind that seeps into your bones when you realize you're living someone else's life. I started the engine, but didn't drive. The wipers moved back and forth, clearing nothing. Somewhere between the rhythm of the rain and the hum of the car, I decided something quietly, without words or drama. Something I couldn't take back later. I would stop giving. And for the first time in years, that thought didn't feel selfish. It felt like breathing. It was a Tuesday afternoon in mid-June when my phone started ringing on my desk at work. I almost ignored it. Unknown number, but the word bank flashing on the screen made my stomach tighten. Hello? Good afternoon, Ms. Monroe, a polite voice said. This is the fraud department at Northwest Federal. We're calling to verify some unusual activity on your account. My fingers froze over the keyboard. What kind of activity? Over the past 48 hours, there have been several high-value transactions totaling $15,000, all made through Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, departing from Miami to the Bahamas. We just need to confirm these were authorized. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. 15,000. Yes, ma'am. Hotel extensions on board luxury purchases and excursions. Were you traveling recently? I stood up so fast my chair hit the wall. No, I'm at work. In Seattle. I haven't been anywhere near the Bahamas. There was a pause, the faint sound of keys clicking. Then we'll treat this as potential fraud. Would you like us to freeze the card immediately? My pulse hammered. My mind raced through every possibility and landed on one. Sam, wait, I said. Don't freeze it yet. I need to check something. I ended the call, heart pounding, and grabbed my bag. By the time I got home, the afternoon light had turned sharp and bright, slicing through the blinds. Mom was in the kitchen flipping through a magazine. Where's Sam? I asked. Mom looked up, surprised by my tone. Why? Where is she? She's traveling, Mom said casually, reaching for her tea. She left a few days ago, some kind of sponsored cruise with her influencer group. You should be proud. It's a great opportunity for her brand. My chest felt tight. Which card did she use? She frowned as if the question was silly. Yours, of course. She told me she borrowed it. Borrowed. I pulled out my phone. $15,000. Mom, does that sound like borrowing to you? Mom waved her hand like she was brushing off dust. Claire, relax. She'll pay you back when her content starts monetizing. Think of it as an investment in the family. The word hit like ice water. An investment. I said quietly. She smiled, oblivious. You know, to help us all. If her channel takes off, she could make real money. It's good for everyone. Mom, I said slowly. Do you realize that's theft? She laughed. Actually laughed. You sound like your father. Don't be so dramatic. We're family. Families share things. No, I said, my voice shaking now. Families ask. They don't steal. Mom's expression hardened. Oh, come on. You're being selfish. You've been so cold lately, Claire. Sam's out there chasing a dream. You should be supporting her. Supporting her. The phrase made my throat ache. I took a step back, staring at her like she was a stranger. She stole from me, and you're defending her. Mom crossed her arms. You make more money than you need. Stop acting like a victim. You're lucky you can help. I wanted to scream, but the anger came out quiet instead. You really think this is help? She shrugged. It's for the future. For all of us. Something inside me settled, not calm, but cold. Good, I said. Then good luck with the trip. She blinked. What's that supposed to mean? Exactly what it sounds like. I walked out before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. I'd never felt that specific kind of anger before, the one that burned clean without confusion or guilt. In my room, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. The cursor blinked in the search bar. I typed, "How to freeze credit card immediately." The confirmation email arrived within minutes. My account was locked. No more charges, no more investments. I stared at the screen, the glow reflecting off my face. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat there, the quiet buzzing in my ears. Then I opened another tab, one I hadn't touched in years. Old emails, job contacts, legal paperwork. I scrolled until I found a name I hadn't thought about since college, Jason Park. Back then, he was the one who helped me fight a messy landlord dispute. Now, his email signature read, Attorney at Law, Real Estate and Family Estates. I hovered over the compose button, my heartbeat steadying. I started typing, "Hi, Jason. This is Claire Monroe. I could use some advice about a property matter. Quietly, if possible." The clack of the keys sounded deliberate, rhythmic, almost soothing. When I hit send, I sat back and exhaled. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the muted laughter from the TV downstairs. In that silence, I felt something shift inside me, something that wasn't guilt or fear this time. It was clarity, and it felt like the first breath after holding one for far too long. The cafe in downtown Portland smelled like roasted beans and rain. It was quiet, filled with the low hum of people typing and the occasional hiss of steamed milk. I spotted Jason immediately. Same messy hair, same half-smile that used to get him out of trouble in college. But the years had given him a steadier posture, the kind that said he'd seen enough chaos to learn how to stand his ground. He waved me over. "Claire Monroe. It's been, 8 years?" "Closer to 10, I said, sitting across from him. He opened his laptop, the blue glow lighting his face. "You said this was about property records. Family house in Bellevue." I nodded, pulling a folded document from my bag. My parents' place. "I need to know who actually owns it." He adjusted his glasses, scanning the printout. "Address," I told him, and he started typing his fingers quick and practiced. For a moment, the only sound was the clicking of keys and the rain pattering softly against the window. Then he looked up. "Well, he said this is interesting. The title's never been transferred. The property's still under Eleanor Hayes." I blinked. "My grandmother." He nodded. "Legally, yes. There's no record of a deed change. Your parents have been living there, but ownership never shifted. Technically, it's her house." My stomach tightened. "So what does that mean?" Jason leaned back. "It means that if she wants to sell it, she can, completely within her rights. And if you're acting with her consent, you're in the clear." I stared at the table, heart pounding. "So I could..." He gave a small shrug. "If she agrees, you could help facilitate the sale. Quietly, even. No one has to know until it's done." The rain outside grew heavier, blurring the world beyond the glass. "Would you handle it?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "If you're sure this is what you want." I hesitated. "What I want doesn't matter. It's what needs to happen." He closed the laptop and slid me a business card. "Call me when you're ready. But if you do this, Claire, there's no going back." I tucked the card into my coat pocket. "I know." Later that afternoon, I stood outside a restaurant called Harbor Table, a warm, cozy place tucked between a flower shop and a bookstore. Through the window, I saw her. Grandma Eleanor, hair tied back, sleeves rolled up, wiping down the counter like she was still 40 instead of 70. She looked up when the bell over the door chimed, and for a second her eyes softened before the steel returned. "Claire," she said, setting down the rag. "It's been a long time." "Too long," I admitted. She poured 2 coffees and motioned for me to sit at a corner booth. "Your mother hasn't spoken to me in years. I assume this isn't a social visit." I told her everything. The money, the manipulation, the cruise, every detail. She listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. When I finished, there was a long silence. She leaned back, folding her hands. "I always knew your mother would take comfort for granted. I just didn't think she'd raise another to follow her lead. She didn't raise Sam to be like that," I said quietly. She let her become it. Eleanor's eyes, gray and sharp, studied me for a long time. "And what do you want from me, Claire?" "I want to sell the house," I said. My voice surprised me with how steady it sounded. Not for revenge, not to hurt them. I just want it to stop. I want to stop being the safety net they never asked for but always expected. She didn't move for several seconds. Then she exhaled, slow and deliberate. "You're not wrong." Jason Park looked up the title. I continued. "It's still under your name. You have the right." She smiled just a little. "Jason Park. That boy always was clever." Her expression hardened. "Claire, your parents will hate you for this. I can live with that." She reached across the table, her hand rough but warm against mine. "You've got more of me in you than I thought." We sat there a while longer, going over details. The logistics, the timing, the part that would make it all seem clean, almost ordinary. "When do we do it?" I asked. Eleanor glanced at the clock on the wall. "They're leaving for that cruise soon, aren't they?" I nodded. "Then when they're gone," she said, her voice low and certain, "we act quietly. By the time they come home, the deed will already be done." The finality in her tone sent a chill through me, but also something else, something like relief. When we stood, she pressed an old set of keys into my palm. "For the back office," she said, "so we can work after hours. Less chance of questions." Outside, the rain had stopped. I walked along the Willamette River, the city lights rippling on the water. The air smelled like wet pavement and cedar. For the first time in years, my shoulders felt lighter. I leaned on the railing, watching the river push against its banks, steady and relentless. I didn't feel angry anymore. Not even hurt. Just clear. I didn't want to destroy them. I only wanted to take back what they'd taken from me. My peace, my boundaries, my voice. The wind picked up, brushing my hair across my face. For the first time in a long time, I felt something that almost resembled freedom. Even if for now it only existed in my mind. The sunlight in the Bahamas looked unreal, like someone had painted it. Sam stood on the deck of a massive white cruise ship, the wind tossing her hair just right. A camera was balanced on a tripod. First day in paradise, she chirped into the lens, holding a flute of champagne. Behind her, the water was turquoise, too clear, too calm. Thousands of miles away, I was stepping out of a lawyer's office in downtown Seattle, a folder tucked under my arm, the ink on the paperwork still drying. The air was gray and cool, the exact opposite of her paradise. When my sister was drinking champagne in the middle of the ocean, I was signing the papers that would end my old life. I stopped at the crosswalk, staring at the city traffic. The file felt heavy in my hand, heavier than it should have. Maybe because I knew it wasn't just about property. It was about finally cutting a cord that had strangled me for years. That afternoon, I met with Ryan Lopez at a quiet cafe near Green Lake. He was in his mid-30s, sleeves rolled up, a mix of warmth and exhaustion in his eyes, the kind you only saw in people who'd been burned before. So he said, flipping open a folder, "This is the property we're selling." "Yes," I said. "It's my grandmother's technically, but she's given full consent. Everything will go through her name." Ryan nodded, scanning the documents. "Looks straightforward. Bellevue's still a seller's market. Shouldn't take long." He hesitated, then looked up. "You sure you want this done quietly?" I nodded. "No one in the family can know until it's final." He studied me for a moment like he was reading between the lines. "You know," he said carefully, "I went through something similar. My ex drained our joint savings while I was working double shifts. I didn't even find out until the divorce hearing. I know what it feels like to have the people closest to you treat your effort like an endless resource." I met his eyes. "Then you understand why I need this, to stay quiet." He gave a small nod. Completely. He closed the folder and slid it toward me. I'll handle everything. No one will know until the deal's done. We shook hands, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of trust. Later that day, I was back at Pixel Forge, surrounded by the low hum of computers and the smell of coffee. Melissa appeared beside my desk, a stack of sketches in her hand. "Claire," she said, "I'm putting you back on the main project. I need someone who understands deadlines and responsibility." Her voice was kind but firm, the same tone she used when she was giving someone a second chance. I looked up from my screen. "I think I've learned a lot about responsibility lately." She smiled. "Good. The build review's next week. Show me what you can do." After she left, I turned to the window. The sun had dipped low, catching on the tall glass buildings. In the reflection, my own face looked different, calmer, sharper. When I got home that night, the house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. I dropped my bag and sat on the couch, opening my phone out of habit. There it was, Sam's latest post. She stood in a white dress, barefoot on the ship's deck, ocean behind her. The caption read, "Living my dream," a heart emoji followed by #blessed. Thousands of comments beneath it, praise, envy, admiration. She looked radiant, untouched by guilt. I stared at the photo for a long time, the blue of the sea reflecting off my screen. Then I turned off the phone and set it face down on the table. I didn't feel jealousy. I didn't even feel anger. Just a hollow quietness, like the pause before a storm. I walked to my desk, turned on the lamp, and pulled out the folder Ryan had given me. The paperwork was neatly clipped together. Every line was in place. I traced my finger over the signature at the bottom, my own next to my grandmother's. The black ink gleamed under the light. Downstairs, the house creaked softly, the kind of sound old wood made when it was settling. For once, I didn't feel trapped in it. I felt like the one holding the key. I stacked the papers carefully back into the folder and closed it. The sound of the latch clicking was small but final. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. And somewhere out there, while Sam toasted to herself under a tropical sky, I was building something quieter, but far more permanent. Preparation. 3 days later, my sister uploaded her big Bahamas vlog. The thumbnail was glossy. Her in a white dress holding a cocktail sunsetting behind her. The title read, "Luxury Cruise Experience, Living My Best Life." The video started with laughter and ocean waves. She filmed the buffet, the spa, the private cabana. At the 20-second mark, she flipped the camera around to show herself signing a check at a restaurant. For less than a second, the bill was in focus, enough for the camera to catch the printed name on the receipt, Claire Monroe. I saw it because someone else did first. A user on a forum called Influencer Fails posted a screenshot. The bill zoomed in my name, sharp as a knife. The caption read, "Isn't that her sister's name? Did she just film herself using someone else's card?" Within hours, it was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, luxury cruise, huh? On someone else's dime, #family fraud is trending. Guess being blessed means having a sister with good credit. Karma isn't magic. It just needs strong Wi-Fi and a few people with too much time on their hands. By that evening, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Colleagues sent me links. Friends from Seattle texted, "Hey, is this about your sister?" I didn't answer any of them. I opened YouTube and watched part of the chaos unfold. Comment sections filled with popcorn emojis, moral lectures, and amateur detectives digging through Sam's past posts. Someone even found a clip from 2 months earlier. Sam bragging that she was self-made. The hypocrisy was oxygen for the fire. By the next morning, local blogs had picked up the story. A headline read, "Influencers Cruise Controversy, Family Drama, or Credit Card Crime." Then the phone rang again. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but the message came through. "Hi, this is Anna Reynolds from Seattle. Now, we're covering a developing story about Samantha Monroe. We'd like to confirm whether the credit card used for her trip belongs to you. Please call me back." I deleted the message. The truth didn't need my confirmation. It was already screaming through every corner of the internet. I didn't need to say anything. The truth was doing it for me. That evening, I came home from work to find my mother's name flashing on the screen. I almost ignored it, but something in me still picked up. Her voice came through frantic and breathless. "Claire, you have to do something. Sam's breaking down. Reporters are calling, people online are saying she's a thief. It's destroying her reputation. I stayed silent for a moment, listening to her panic. Claire, are you there? She said louder now. You have to help your sister. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Was it? I asked quietly. Mom didn't answer. Just breathing quick and shallow. Please, she said finally. She made a mistake. You can fix this. I already did. I said and hung up. I turned on the TV. The evening news was covering it now. Video of Sam at the airport, sunglasses on, surrounded by cameras. Reporters shouted questions. Did you steal your sister's money? Did you use her credit card without permission? Sam tried to smile, but her face was trembling. She muttered something about a misunderstanding, but it didn't matter. The headline below her image read, "Influencer accused of family fraud." During Bahamas trip, I stood there watching my own last name crawl across the screen in bold letters. For years I'd carried that name like a burden. Tonight it didn't feel heavy anymore. I sat at the kitchen table, my laptop open, printer humming softly. The contract was ready. The final version Ryan had sent earlier that day. I hit print. The pages slid out one by one, the black ink crisp against the white paper. I stacked them neatly, slipped them into a folder, and placed it in my bag. The phone buzzed again. Mom, then Dad, then Sam. Each call came within minutes of the last relentless. I turned the phone face down, silenced the vibration. For the first time, I didn't answer. The house was quiet, except for the printer's final click. I slid the folder shut, the sound firm and certain. I looked around the room. The same kitchen where my mother had told me, think of it as an investment in the family. Maybe it was, just not in the way she expected. I reached over and turned off the lamp. The room went dark except for the faint blue glow of my computer screen and the folder sitting beside it, ready for what came next. I used to rush in every time they fell apart, but this time I let them fall, and I didn't plan to catch them. The rain came early that morning, thin and steady, tapping against the windows, like it had been waiting for this day. The house smelled like damp wood and lemon cleaner. Boxes lined the hallway, stacked unevenly beside old family photos, school portraits, vacations, Christmas mornings. All the little trophies of a family that had long stopped existing the way it looked in pictures. I sat in the living room across from Ryan and my grandmother. Jason, our lawyer, stood by the coffee table reading over the final documents. His voice was calm, precise. Upon signature, the property at 214 Maple Ridge Avenue will officially transfer ownership. Payment will be wired by noon tomorrow. All conditions have been met. The words didn't sound real, maybe because they were too simple for what they meant. I picked up the pen. My signature was neat, careful, like I'd practiced it for this exact moment. Jason nodded, sliding the last page forward. Congratulations, it's done. Ryan closed his folder, his tone professional but soft. The buyers are a young couple. They loved the place the moment they saw it. I think it's going to get the care it deserves. I looked around the room. The couch where Sam used to watch TV. The carpet with a faint coffee stain from a fight Mom and Dad had when I was a teenager. The echoes of old noise lingered in every corner. They used to call me the one who kept this house alive. The provider. The stable one. The machine that never stopped running. Today, I pulled the plug. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere over the sound. The rain began to fall harder, streaking the glass. Grandma Eleanor stood and stretched her joints, cracking softly. She placed a hand on my shoulder. This house needed a new beginning, she said. Just like you. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Do you ever feel guilty? I asked quietly. She smiled. A small, tired smile. Only when I forget that guilt and gratitude sound the same to people who take more than they give. Jason gathered his things. I'll file the closing documents this afternoon. You'll both get confirmation by email. As they packed up, I lingered by the window. The backyard looked smaller than I remembered, the old oak tree bent a little lower. I could almost see the outline of two kids running through the grass, one chasing the other with a garden hose. Claire, Ryan said gently. You ready? I turned. Yeah, I'm ready. We walked through the house one last time, checking for anything left behind. The walls were bare now, stripped of photographs. Only the faint squares of lighter paint showed where they once hung. In the kitchen, I pulled a sticky note from my notebook and wrote a single line. A real investment is learning to earn it. I pressed it to the fridge, the yellow paper standing out against the silver door. When we stepped outside, the rain was falling in sheets. Ryan pulled up his collar. You sure you don't want an umbrella? I shook my head. No, let it rain. He nodded once, gave a small wave, and headed to his car. I stood under the porch watching the water cascade off the roof. The sound was rhythmic, steady, like the heartbeat of a house saying its last goodbye. I turned the key in the lock, heard the quiet click, and slipped it into an envelope for the realtor. For a long moment, I didn't move. I just stared at the house. The place that had raised me, used me, broken me. Then my phone buzzed. Melissa. I answered. "Hey, Claire," she said, her voice bright but firm. "I wanted to talk before the weekend. We're rebooting the project. I want you to lead it." For a second, I almost laughed. "After everything that happened, especially after everything that happened," she said, "you're the only one I trust to hold things together. You still up for it?" I glanced at the house again, the rain blurring its shape until it looked almost like a memory. "I'm ready," I said. When the call ended, I slipped the phone into my pocket, picked up my suitcase, and walked to the car. The wipers brushed aside the rain as I pulled out of the driveway. The street was slick, reflecting the gray morning light. In the rearview mirror, the house grew smaller, softer, until it disappeared behind a turn. For the first time, I left that house without promising to come back. And for the first time, I didn't look back to make sure it was still standing. The arrivals gate at Seattle-Tacoma was chaos. The flashes from cameras hit like lightning every few seconds. My parents stumbled out first, tired and squinting. Sam followed behind them, her oversized sunglasses failing to hide the panic in her eyes. Reporters shouted her name as she pushed past the crowd. "Sam, do you have a comment about the credit card scandal? Did your sister press charges? Are you planning to apologize publicly?" She kept her head down, lips pressed tight, moving quickly toward the exit. My father tried to shield her from the photographers, shouting, "Leave her alone," but it only made the flashes stronger. When they finally reached the car, the three of them sat there for a long moment, breathing hard, drenched in sweat and embarrassment. The drive back to Bellevue was silent except for the windshield wipers. My mother looked out her window the entire time, clutching a tissue that had long stopped being useful. Sam scrolled through her phone, reading what I knew had to be thousands of angry comments. By the time they turned onto Maple Ridge Avenue, the rain had started again. Thin, almost delicate, the kind that hides the sound of disappointment. Then they saw it. The sold sign in the front yard was the first thing that hit them, the red letters catching the glow of the streetlights. The next was the padlock on the door. Dad slammed on the brakes. The car lurched forward, and for a second no one spoke. Then Mom whispered, "No," under her breath like the word might undo what she was seeing. Sam was the first to get out. She ran to the porch, pulling at the handle. "It's locked," she yelled. Mom followed, her voice cracking. "Where are the keys?" "Where's our key?" Dad stepped out into the rain, pulling his phone from his pocket with trembling hands. He dialed furiously. "Mom," he barked when the call connected. "You can't do this. You can't sell our home." The voice on the other end was calm and firm. "Grandma Eleanor, I didn't sell your home, Richard. I sold mine. You've been living in it rent-free for years. That's over now. This is insane," he shouted. "We have nowhere to go." Her tone didn't change. "Then you'll have to come here. I've made arrangements in Portland." The call ended before he could say another word. Mom's legs gave out. She sat on the porch steps, crying into her hands. "Everything's gone," she whispered. "Everything we had." Sam stood motionless under the porch light, mascara streaking down her face. "Where are we supposed to live? What are we supposed to do?" Dad dropped the phone onto the wet grass and kicked one of the suitcases, sending it tumbling into the driveway. "This isn't happening," he muttered. But it was. I wasn't there, but I could imagine every second of it. I'd seen that porch my whole life, seen my mother standing on it, smiling, pretending everything inside the house was perfect. Now it was nothing but an empty shell stripped bare of illusions. They said I was cruel. Maybe I was. But sometimes people have to lose a home to learn what work really means. Dad picked up his phone again, this time calling me. I let it ring twice before answering. "What did you do?" he demanded, his voice hoarse. "This is our house." "No," I said quietly. "It was Grandma's house. Now it belongs to someone who'll take care of it. You can't just—" "I didn't," I said. "She did." There was a long pause. I could hear the rain through his end of the line, heavy now, drowning out his breathing. "You're heartless," he said finally. I looked out the window of my apartment in Seattle, watching the same rain streak down the glass. "No," I said softly. "I just stopped playing the role you wrote for me." He hung up without another word. Back in Bellevue, Sam stood beside the car, scrolling frantically through her phone. Her followers were leaving by the hundreds. Brand deals were dropping. The last travel agency she'd worked with had posted a polite but firm statement cutting ties. Her dream, her brand, was unraveling in real time. Dad loaded the suitcases back into the car. Mom wiped her face, staring blankly at the sold sign like it might change if she just kept looking long enough. "Let's go," he said. His voice had no fight left. They climbed into the car silent and soaked the headlights cutting through the rain as they turned out of the neighborhood. The houses they passed were warm and glowing families, sitting down to dinner, laughter muffled by walls. Inside their car, there was nothing but the hum of the engine and the sound of tires splashing through puddles. No one spoke. They drove toward the highway, the city fading behind them, the sky growing darker by the mile. Toward Portland, toward a kind of reckoning none of them were ready for. The first time I saw them again was 3 weeks later in Portland. The rain had just stopped, leaving the air thick and shining. Harbor Table sat on the corner of a quiet street, the smell of salt and butter drifting out through the open windows. I recognized the sound of my grandmother's voice before I even stepped inside. She stood behind the counter in her apron, silver hair tied back, sleeves rolled to her elbows. When the door swung open, she didn't look surprised. "They're in the back," she said simply. "If they want to stay under my roof, they work for it." The clatter of dishes and the hiss of the kitchen hit me as I walked through. My father was at the sink, his dress shirt replaced with a faded gray T-arms, deep in soapy water. He looked up, once met my eyes, and looked back down. His face was red from the heat. Margaret, my mother, was carrying plates to a table. A customer was waving his hand impatient. "Ma'am," I said, "no onions." He complained. She froze for half a second, then forced a smile. "Of course, I'll fix that right away." I watched her walk back to the kitchen, balancing the plate like it was made of glass. On the far side of the dining room, Sam was on her knees, wiping the floor, a half-empty coffee cup tipped over beside her. The brown stain was spreading. She dabbed at it furiously, her once manicured nails chipped and uneven. A man in a suit accidentally brushed past her, spilling a few more drops. "Sorry," he said without looking. She flinched, swallowed whatever words came up, and just kept scrubbing. "Karma doesn't punish. It teaches." I stayed near the door, invisible to them for a moment, until Grandma called out from the counter. "Breaks in 10 minutes, everyone." Her tone was strict, but not unkind. Sam looked up, then her eyes finding me. She froze, rag in hand. Slowly she stood, wiping her palms on her apron. "Claire," she said quietly. "Hi, Sam." She hesitated before walking over. Up close, she looked smaller somehow, her shoulders drawn and makeup gone. "I didn't think you'd come. I wanted to see how you were doing." She laughed once hollow. "I'm learning." She looked down at her shoes. "I'm sorry for everything. I didn't get it before, but I do now." I believed her. Her voice didn't have the rehearsed shine it used to, just exhaustion and maybe understanding. "Knowing you're wrong," I said softly, "is a start, but what you do after, that's what matters." She nodded, biting her lip to keep it from trembling. "I know." Behind her, Mom appeared, wiping her hands on a towel. She looked older than the last time I'd seen her, the lines around her mouth deeper. She stopped a few feet away. "Claire," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "Your grandmother was right. We were living like everything was owed to us. I called the wrong thing an investment." She reached out, hesitating before her hand touched my shoulder. "Family isn't profit. It's work." I wanted to stay angry, but I couldn't. The sight of them, sweating, working, trying, made something inside me ease just a little. "I know," I said. "And I think you're finally learning that." A server called for help from the back, and Mom wiped her eyes quickly before turning away. "I have to go." Sam gave me a small, real smile. "Thank you for coming," she said. I nodded. "Take care of yourself." When I stepped outside, the light had shifted. The rain had left a shimmer on the pavement, turning the street into a mirror of neon signs. I walked slowly, listening to the sounds of the restaurant fade behind me. The clinking dishes, the low hum of voices, the rhythm of a new routine forming. For the first time in years, I didn't feel responsible for fixing anyone. I didn't feel angry, or even proud. Just free. I didn't need revenge. I just needed to walk away, owing nothing. A year later, Seattle was alive, in a way it hadn't been in a long time. The mornings were bright and clean, the kind that made the air smell like salt and possibility. I woke early sunlight spilling across the hardwood floors of my new apartment overlooking Elliott Bay. When I pushed open the window, the wind off the water carried the faint sound of ferry horns. For a moment, I just stood there breathing. No noise from anyone else's problems. No endless questions about money. No guilt. Just quiet. On my desk sat a framed photo from the Pixel Forge team. Everyone grinning, confetti in the air, champagne mid-spray. We'd just won Best Narrative Design for our newest game. My name was on the credits first for the design team. It felt strange realizing that the life I'd dreamed of back in that old house was finally mine, after I'd stopped trying to earn it from people who never planned to give it. The computer pinged with a new email. It was from Ryan. "Hey Claire, just a quick update," it read. "The couple who bought your grandmother's house asked me to pass along a thank you. They said the place already feels like home. They're planning to plant new rose bushes along the back porch. Thought you'd like to know." I smiled, staring at the words a little longer than I needed to. I could almost see it, a younger pair, maybe just starting out, bringing life back to that space that once felt so heavy. It made sense that roses would return there. My grandmother had always said they were stubborn flowers, cut them down, and they still found a way to bloom again. I minimized the email and opened an old photo folder. The first image was of that same porch years ago. Me and Sam sitting on the steps. Legs swinging ice cream dripping down our wrists. Dad behind the camera. Mom telling us to smile like we mean it. I didn't feel bitterness anymore when I looked at it. Just distance, like it belonged to another life. The phone buzzed beside the keyboard. A text from Sam. She'd sent a picture her in a crisp white shirt and apron name tag pinned neatly to her chest. "Got promoted," the message said. "Assistant manager. Grandma says she's proud. Hope you're doing well." For a long moment I didn't reply. I just looked at the picture. The smile she wore wasn't the old practiced one for the camera. It was smaller, real. Every person gets a chance to make things right if they're willing to start from zero. I set the phone down and stepped out onto the balcony. The city was waking up beneath me. The waterfront cranes moving slowly, people walking, dogs, joggers tracing the edge of the water. The sunlight broke through the clouds, turning everything gold for a few seconds. It hit me then, the understanding that peace doesn't come from payback. It comes from release. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for a broken family is stop saving them. Respect shouldn't be a privilege. It should be the bare minimum. The wind shifted, brushing my hair across my face. I stayed there until the warmth started to fade, until the light on the bay turned silver again. Then I stepped back inside, closing the glass door behind me. The apartment filled with that quiet, peaceful sound. The city faint but far away. I looked around the room once more, the framed photo, the stack of design sketches, the life that finally belonged to me. If you've ever had to choose between family and freedom, remember? Sometimes justice begins the moment you learn to say no. ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important info.